get the show on the road. We want to honor the
All
time
right,
for
it is
those who are showing
9:04.
up.
We are going to begin. Hey, I'm Greg Height. I'm a board member and lead trainer for the Georgia Lacrosse Officials Association. And this is part of a webinar that I have wanted to put together for a number of years now on taxes and officiating. If people think we don't know what we're doing when it comes to officiating, we definitely don't know what we're doing when it comes to taxes and officiating. And so I feel like this is a really important topic that can be of value, not just to our members, but members all over the country. Okay. All right. I want to introduce to you one of the charter members of the Georgia Lacrosse Officials Association, and a friend of mine, Nick Brown, and his friend David Kempe. And I want you to sit there and listen. Make sure if you've got questions, you pop them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that. And then at the end of their presentation, I will have we'll have an opportunity to ask questions. So without further ado, Nick, tell us about yourself, your experience with both lacrosse and taxes.
All right. Good evening, and welcome. Glad that you're here. You could have been anywhere, and we're excited that you're here tonight. My story is I started officiating in the late 80s. I was in Syracuse, New York, and in 93, I got introduced to lacrosse. I picked it up because it was in the spring. I was a basketball guy, and that was my main sport and continued to be my main sport. I'm a Hall of Fame basketball official, and lacrosse was a way for me to stay in shape. So that's how I stayed in shape. I was doing soccer in the Northeast, it's in the fall. So soccer was getting in shape for basketball, winter doing basketball, and then lacrosse in the spring to stay in shape. And so it was working out well and everything was going fine. Run, pass, shoot, and score. So it was ideal. In 99, I transitioned back to my home state of Georgia and continued to do some lacrosse, and eventually GLOA was formed. I was fortunate enough to be involved with as a charter member and have continued to participate in the sport and of course with the association. My background is my day job. I was an IRS revenue agent, and I retired in January of 2020 after 36 years. And then March 7th was my last officiating game. I was doing basketball playoffs, and then COVID came March 8th. And at that point, I never went back to officiating. I was already nearing the end. I was 33 years in with refereeing and was getting near the end and was thinking about retiring and giving it up. And it just so happened that all of that happened in 2020. And so that's my background. I did softball for a little while, but eventually just went to soccer, basketball, and lacrosse. Then when I came to Georgia, soccer is in the spring, and I love lacrosse a whole lot more than I do soccer. So those became my two sports, and that's what I rode off into the sunset doing. Along the way, I met David Kempe. He was doing basketball, found out that he's into, he's a CPA by training. And so he and I started doing this road show. We traveled around the state and did this before COVID. And then once COVID came, we kind of shut it down. And now we've been fortunate enough that there's been a resurgence and a renewal in this information. And so we were honored to say yes to the request to do this for GLOA. And that's how we come to you tonight. And with that, I'll give you my friend David.
I'm David Kempe. I started doing refereeing when I got back from Germany as an officer at Fort Bliss. State gave me something to do, helped me with my decision-making process. And I got into basketball and then got into the baseball and softball at Fort Bliss. Got out of the Army, went to Fort Lewis up Northwest, and then transferred into Atlanta at Fort McPherson. Gave up officiating for 10 years because my wife insisted I be baseball, softball, soccer, basketball dad. And I did that for about 10 years and then started up again in mid-90s. At Pete State, met Nick, did basketball, started doing softball and baseball. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I still do baseball, still do softball, still do basketball, though I'm thinking maybe the body at 69 years old is telling me I should give up basketball, but I still do taxes. I'm not going to go into the long detail about how I do taxes. It's just that is now my main job, and I do taxes for all sorts of people, but I also do taxes for sports officials. And we will go into a slow presentation here. It won't take that long, but we'll go into it and give you all the necessary information.
So if you go to the first slide, and so that's just so you'll know who we are. Nick Brown, IRS agent, now retired. Dave's still in the business. He's preparing tax returns. Both of us, as we said, are sports officials, and each have over 30 years of officiating in different sports. Next slide, please. So, taxes for sports officials. Everyone has to pay their taxes, even lacrosse officials. Now, here's the thing. Tax evasion is a crime, but tax avoidance is not. And so this is a statement that always works. And when I was there working for the man, the IRS, they told us this, and this always works. It's your duty as an American citizen to pay all of your taxes on your worldwide income. And the thing that a lot of people don't pay attention to is the other part, which is now you get to deduct all of the expenses associated with. And in the sports officiating game, until you start making it to the big time and start getting some comma checks and things like that, you're always at a loss. And so don't cheat yourself out of your ability to be a productive citizen and take advantage of the way the tax laws are written for you. Thanks a lot. Next slide.
Okay, this is my tip. So, apply with the tax laws. In the long term, that's what you need to do. You think you might be getting away with it by not reporting your income. Trust me, the IRS knows about it. Eventually, they're going to find out that. So you report your officiating income, even if you don't get a 1099. You claim all your legitimate tax deductions. Like Nick says, the deductions are varied, they're large, and unless you're a college level official or go up into the pro level official, more than likely your expenses will exceed your income. And you can write that loss off against your other income. But the goal is you're going to pay the least amount of tax as allowed by the law. Next slide, please. Okay. Your income is reported to the IRS and to the state by two forms. Form 1099 NEC. NEC stands for non-employee compensation. And very rarely by W-2. If you're getting a W-2, that means you're an employee, and no association really wants to do that. So I think of all the associations I've been associated with and all the things I've talked with, I think only one does the W-2. Next slide.
Let me give some information here. So what happens here in the world of the 1099s, the reason that you're not going to be an employee is because if you're a W-2 employee, then now you're going to be looking at retirement, benefits, and the association of whoever is paying you is going to be responsible for paying a portion of your taxes, and we'll talk about that later on. In the world of 1099, you're in charge of your own business. You're the one, you're doing what you do. And there are a lot of things that you do in sports officiating, and you're still being paid with the 1099, but there are parts of it that are just like being a W-2 employee. They tell you when and where you're going to work. They tell you how to work. They tell you what you're going to wear, the rules that you work by. And all these things are things that you have to comply with in order to do the job. So those, yes, do seem like they're W-2, but there are other parts of it that actually are 1099. And it's been litigated and it's been decided, and it is. Until you become a W-2, you're always a 1099. And the only people that are W-2 employees are the NBA and Major League Baseball. Everyone else is 1099. All right, next slide, please. So that's what I was talking about, independent contractors. You're doing your own business. And so everything else you're responsible for and you're in charge of and you're taking care of. Dave?
Next slide, please. Okay, here's how your income is going to report it. Everyone knows about the Form 1040. There used to be a Form 1040A and there used to be a Form 1040EZ. That doesn't exist anymore. It's all exclusively 1040. The Schedule C is the form that you will use to report your income and, more importantly, report all your expenses. We'll go through the expenses on the next slide. Schedule SC is used to calculate your self-employment income. You're asking, well, what's self-employment income tax? If you're a W-2 employee, you get a pay stub every week, every other week, every month. You get a little notation here of Social Security and Medicare taxes that's withheld from your income, withheld at a total of 7.65%. What a lot of people don't know is that every dollar you pay into that thing, your employer matches it dollar for dollar. That's his side of the FICA taxes, Social Security and Medicare taxes. When you're a self-employed independent owner, independent contractor, you're both employee and employer. So you're paying both sides of those taxes. Self-employment tax is 15.3% of your net profit on your Schedule C. The next two forms are forms that you will use as part of your filing process. 8829 is business use of the home. Everyone should claim this because, yes, you do have to have home and stuff like that. It used to be really stringent. It had to be a separate room and stuff like that. The IRS has loosened up on that. What you need to have is an area of your home that you do your business on, basically a desk, a chair, and a computer or a laptop. Okay, small amount, but that small amount, let's say it's 50 square feet of a 1,500 square foot apartment, that's about 10%, 15, about 8-7%. You get to prorate your rent, your utility costs, if you own a home, your mortgage interest, and your property taxes. It's not a lot, but it's something that's worth the effort to claim. 4562 is used to claim depreciation on your equipment. Some of your equipment for some officials do need to be depreciated, and your car. Now, if you claim the mileage deduction, you don't claim the actual depreciation on the car. Depreciation is factored into the mileage. But this form is used to report the mileage on your car for the mileage write-off. Next slide. Okay. On the next slide, we have the mileage deduction. And this is going to be your biggest deduction on your tax return at 65.5 cents a mile for calendar year 2023. You say, well, that doesn't sound like a lot. Think about it. You're assigned a lacrosse game in Atlanta. You live down in the south side and you've got to drive up to the north side. That's a 40-mile drive from where you work. And then it's another 50-mile drive to your home. That's 90 miles. Do you get to claim the entire 90 miles? No. You have to factor in what you would have driven home from your job. Let's say you drove 20 miles to your job. So 40 miles to the job, from the job to the field, 50 miles to home, minus the 20 miles you would have driven had you not gone to the thing. 70 miles. 70 miles times 65.5 cents, that's $43, $44. That's a significant chunk of the check you got paid for the lacrosse game. It's a big deduction. Other deductions are your commissions and fees.
Okay. All right. So like your commission and fees, these are like your dues to your associations. When you go to camp, you pay to go to camp. So you're going to have, that's the place where those expenses are on your return, or whoever's preparing the return. It's not going to say dues. It's not going to say camp fees and things like that. So what we're saying is that these are the things that will be on the form. And now what we're telling you is where those expenses that you have will be on the form. And so in your commissions and fees, that's where you'll put your dues. That's where you put your camp fees, things like that. That's where that'll go. Your uniform and equipment, that's pretty standard. You know what all of that is. Flags, whistles, coins, your uniforms, that is your shoes, all those kinds of things. Now, travel costs, Dave's going to talk a little bit about the travel costs, hotel. I'll come back and talk about the insurance.
Okay. If you're a college official, but you're not D1 high-level college official, you're paying your own travel costs. For baseball, maybe baseball umpire is a perfect example. D2, D3, JUCO college officials, they can pay maybe $150, $250 a game, but they have to drive Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, South North Carolina to do their games. All that mileage runs up. And if they're doing really a lot of driving, they have to spend the night. So they have to pay the hotel costs and they have to pay for the meals. Some college officials get games across the country, they have to pay airfare. Now they probably get reimbursed for the airfare, but that reimbursement is part of your salary. It's part of the 1099 NEC you get, so you have to claim the airfare. And then, of course, their insurance costs. I'm gonna let Nick go talk about the insurance.
So the big thing about insurance that is important for us is that when you belong to an association, the association has insurance. And so Georgia High School pays for you as an official. The association pays a premium to Georgia High School. But when you're doing rec ball or you're doing some AAU or you're moving around different tournaments, you're traveling and doing things, you're not covered. And so what you want to do is you want to be sure that any game that you are assigned, there is some insurance somewhere that will cover you. And so that's where organizations like NASO come into play and other USA Lacrosse, things like that, that will have some policies that will cover you. And so you want to be sure that you belong to some kind of organization that will give you some kind of umbrella coverage in case there is nothing. And, this is a litigious society, and you certainly don't want to be caught out there without any kind of insurance. Yes, you might have some homeowners, and yes, you might have that in your car, maybe, but you really want to have some kind of sports officiating insurance. And then in those policies, sometimes they have game fee reimbursement. So if you have an assignment that is scheduled, and now for some reason you are unable to perform those duties because of a claim that your insurance will cover, you could possibly get a reimbursement for games that you're not able to do in the future. So insurance is a big thing to be concerned about, and be sure that you have an umbrella insurance. Now, liability insurance, medical insurance, Dave can talk about those. And then we can kind of wrap up with these other expenses that are there at the bottom of the list.
Okay. So Nick mentioned the insurance by NASO, which is a great policy. We're paying the NASO fee, which I believe is about $120 this year. You get $500,000 of liability insurance, which is critical. Story. Man was umpiring. He forgot to call time. And a player, high school player, rounded second, went to third, slid into third on a play that wasn't necessary, broke his ankle. The courts held the official liable for not stopping the play. He didn't have insurance. He lost his retirement. He's still paying that thing off because the player involved was a major league prospect. And
all players are
go ahead.
All players are major league prospects. They're all going to be Michael Jordan. They're all going to be a superstar. So whoever it is, don't worry, you're going to get sued.
And then there's the medical insurance. NASO offers medical insurance if officiating is your only source of income. Don't laugh. I have had clients who officiate rec ball, high school, junior college, and that's their only source of income. And they make a pretty decent salary. Not great, but they could live on. long as they didn't have a wife or kids. Okay, the other deductions is cell phone costs. You can deduct the cost of the actual phone as a computer. You can deduct the cost of your laptop computer because you need your laptop to do your assignment work and stuff like that. Cost of your internet, cost of your cell phone service, not the entire cost, percentage. 50% is generally accepted without any question by the IRS. Office costs, office supplies, and other various deductions that you can think about and you can go on. Next slide, please. Okay, here's the conclusion.
All right, so you know that you need to comply with all of the tax laws because the IRS will find you eventually. We all know, or you may know of a story regarding what happened in the NBA, probably about over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The officials used to get paid to travel, and they would take the ticket that they were given first class, exchange it for coach second class, and then the difference they would pocket. And so there were a couple of officials who were involved with the travel agency, and so they were helping their buddies and people to do that. And then a divorce came about, and then the wife said, oh, there's a second set of books. And when that set of books came about, the dominoes started to fall. There was a situation in Syracuse when I was there. Officials were getting paid by the city, you know, for doing rec ball and things like that. An employee of the city was getting paid, of course, because that was something that they did as a sports official. And then when the matching came up, it showed that this employee wasn't claiming the sports income. And so then that was a string that was pulled, and then the audit started, and that domino started to fall. So it may take a while, but you don't want to be there when they get to you because it's much later. And now we got all the penalties and interest for your failure to file and failure to pay back when you were supposed to. So just do the right thing. And as I said, until you really get to the big time, you're losing money at this game anyway. And if you're not losing money at this game, you're doing something wrong. You better talk to Dave or somebody. So prepare your return and use your current tax software. There's new every year. There's free file. The IRS has it. There are all kind of places you can go and get help to get it done. You can do it yourself. It's pretty simple. Once you start doing it, you know, you pay to have somebody do it one time, and then you do it every year after that, or every 2 or 3, 4 years.
Yep. We have a question in the chat. If we use one of the commercial tax filing software packages, is there anything we should be on the lookout for, pros or cons, like missing forms, deduction opportunities, etc.?
Not
specifically, because those are designed to ask you the appropriate questions so that the correct forms or correct deductions and things are there. But they're limited in that, as you see in bullet number 3, you want to use a tax professional, obviously a competent one, but preferably somebody that has experience with filing for sports officials, because there's certain things that are specific to this industry that a general questionnaire with one of those software packages may or may not ask you. But in general, no, there shouldn't be any issue or question or problem with that. Good question. All right, and with that, hey, it leads us right into where we wanted to be. Next slide, please. Excellent. Hey, I think you set that up, Dave.
So we're here to ask questions. Go ahead and unmute.
Yep.
And not all at once, go ahead and ask your questions, if you have any.
We can't go here. Yep, there we go. Excellent. All right. There's a chat.
Nothing left in the chat.
Nothing in the chat.
I mean, I will ask a question.
Okay.
You know, can you deduct your cell phone Because most of the games that I accept actually do it on my cell phone and calling assigners and calling crew members and calling coaches and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. I mean, the cell phone is becoming more and more something that you have to have in order to do the business. Of course, when I started, everything was written down. And I was in Syracuse, and you would fill out a voucher at the game. And then I remember several times coming on Friday, and on the field, I'd pick up a piece of paper, and that's the voucher that somebody filled out for Wednesday's game, where, they put it in a book and somebody just failed to keep track of it. And so that piece of paper is out there. And so we kept track of it, get it like that. But now everything is, electronic, on the phone, you're accepting, you're doing things like that. So it is a valuable piece of how we do what we do. And certainly there is a percentage of time associated with.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the percentage of time?
Therein is where you want to be judicious and not crazy. And here's the phrase that was always important when I was doing examinations. Pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered. Judge yourself accordingly.
Okay.
All right, I've got another question from the chat here.
With the LLC. Okay, let me address that.
Okay.
Go ahead and read the question.
Let me read. Yeah, read the question.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations on opening an LLC or similar to help shield taxes, help separate day job from referee side job? Okay. Limited liability companies is not a tax entity. It's a business entity. It's an entity designed to protect you from litigation, protect your personal assets. You separate yourself from your personal life. Okay. But the LLC, for the most part, is still reported on the Schedule C. You can set it up as a partnership. I don't know how, because partnership by definition means you have to have two people. There's only one of you. So that leaves basically subchapter S corporation. The forms between a subchapter S corporation and a partnership are virtually identical.
So you always used to hear these stories about.
That's the one Gabby be going to.
And
Is that the free one or the one you pay for?
Want to mute that one? Yeah, thank you.
Guys, I need everybody to mute.
Right, not anymore.
And they moved it from down by the waterfront somewhere else.
But a host can mute that one. We don't need to hear their background. So one of the things that you always hear about is an LLC. With a corporation, someone would have an airplane, and they would put the airplane in the LLC so that if anything happened with the airplane, they would only be able to go after the assets that are in the LLC that are associated with the airplane. So as Dave is saying, for what we are doing, the LLC really isn't to your advantage, because all you're going to do is end up filing the same way that you would file with a Schedule C, because it's going to come to your tax return as an individual anyway. So you're going to end up in the same position. Now, this is for education purposes only. You might be able to, and if you decided to and you wanted to do that, then you could do that. I think what you're trying to do is find out, the question is a recommendation. So everybody's tax situation is going to be different. And what we're going to do is just give you some general information and help you out with things that we've done for ourselves. But you'll want to talk to somebody and find out if that makes sense for you, because there's some things that would be applicable in answering that question for someone saying, hey, yeah, you should do an LLC. For instance, you might be getting money from a trust, or you may have some trust considerations coming up in the future. There could be some personal reasons to establish it. So in general, no, it's not an advantage for us, because at this level, you're going to pay the taxes the same way anyway. So, but a good question.
Yeah. Next, any other questions?
Hey, Nick, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So I thought I just wanted to clarify, you were kind of alluding to the rate or the amount deducted for things like internet, cell phone, and so forth. Is 50% of the cost, is that a kind of a standard reasonable kind of thing? Or is there a better way to calculate that?
Well, that's a great question, Stuart. And for a person like you, because you're an assigner, you're on the phone probably a lot more than a worker, one of the people, who's getting games. So your
Mhm.
usage is going to be higher. If you remember back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we used to get the bill and it used to have every number that you called and it gave all the times and all of that. So it was a lot easier to go through and then say, yeah, these are all, and this is how I come up with my percentage. It's going to be up to the individual. And then the other thing too is if you say 50% of my phone usage is for sports, but you only referee, let's say for lacrosse, you start in February or January, there's a little bit. February starts picking up. You're going hard April, March, April, May, dies off June. And let's say you don't really have anything, it's negligible the rest of the way. And now you come and you say 50%. Well, it's not 50% of the whole year. It's probably something closer to a 10 to 15% for the whole year. So
Okay.
you have to think about it like that.
Yeah.
And, for me, when I was doing it, it was percentages based on activity. So I would look at how many games I had, what I was doing, where I was traveling, where I'm doing a lot of activity. I'm going to say, yeah, I got more cell phone use at that time, and then maybe ratchet it up a little bit. But for me, I would say it's going up and down. And so you have to be judicious. And the other thing too is, as with any deduction on any tax return, how are you going to be able to prove that? So you come in with 50%, they say, well, show me how you came up with 50%. Now maybe you're going back and getting call logs or, whatever. So, you want to be judicious about it and you don't want to raise a red flag, but you do want to avail yourself to a deduction that is rightly available to you.
Okay. No, that makes
That
perfect sense.
Hope that
Thanks.
helps. Yeah. Now,
Any other questions?
yes.
Looking at the thing, someone come up off mute?
No, that was me. All right, if nobody has any questions, Nick, David, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. This is I think a topic that's really important for all of us, and we've wanted to tackle this for a while. So I'm very appreciative of you guys taking your time. Thank you so much, guys. This will be on social media and our YouTube channel. I'll put it in the post on our website. Hey guys, thank you all. Really
All right.
appreciate.
Hang on. I saw, there was a hands up. Maybe it went away. And
I
then
think
it's
it
a thumbs up.
says Stuart Smith
Okay.
gave you a thumbs up, and Taylor
Thank
says
you.
this was awesome. So,
Okay, thanks. I thought Fred Moss had their hand up, but maybe that was something else.
all right.
Okay.
All right,
Excellent.
guys. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great evening. Good luck with the rest of the season, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you. Glad that we could be here. Have a great rest of the season. And of course, if there's anything we ever can do for you, give us a shout out.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.